Since World of Tanks began, there have always been a few constants in it. The IS-7's incredible turret armor, the disdain that a lot of Soviet tanks, the IS-3 as an example, has for their lack of accuracy, and they seem to end up being pinpoint accurate. Also, one of the constants has been that the MAUS was limited to 20 kilometers an hour forwards. With the addition to Equipment 2.0 and the Turbo, it revolutionized the way that you could play the MAUS. It could now go at 24 kilometers an hour forwards. That step up of 20% allowed you to race into position quicker than ever before. And considering that a turbocharger adds a flat amount to the speed of a vehicle, having 4 kilometers an hour more on a MAUS is way more impactful than other tanks which already have decent top speed limits. The relatively new introduction of field modules has allowed you to be able to take the MAUS to a whole new level without the need for a Bond turbo. For example, when you reach field module level 6, you're able to get yourself a mobility slot that will further increase the top speed limit of your turbocharger by 1 kilometer an hour forwards and backwards. And upon reaching field modification 7, you can get padding removal, which further increases the MAUS's top speed limit by an additional 2 kilometers an hour and also its hull traverse speed by 5%. It comes at the expense of extra damage from high explosive rounds, increased stun duration from now the pretty much non-existent artillery class, and sure, your crew can take a little bit more damage, but to gain an extra 10% base top speed, it's got to be totally worth it. So ladies and gents, boys and girls, without further ado, let's put the fastest MAUS that I've ever had to the test. And we nearly got up to 30 kilometers an hour, albeit it was downslope. Now look, you can increase the top speed limit all you want with the field modifications, but unless you actually increase the engine power of the vehicle, or the ground resistances, then it's not going to be able to handle itself up most slopes. One recommendation I have on this tank is that you should definitely take the first field, or I think it might be the second or the third field modification. The first one you actually get to choose a statistic. Definitely pick the one that allows you to maintain your speed. That effectively just improves your ground resistances, and for some reason, as it stands, it also keeps your traverse speed pretty much the same as if you pick the one that actually improves your traverse speed altogether, because of the fact that ground resistances also affect the traverse speed of the vehicle. When you combine that with the turbocharger inside the mobility slot from the 6th field modification that you get, now you've got 10% extra engine power to go along with that, and it significantly reduces the time that it takes the MAUS to be able to get to the front, and I think it's detrimental to the game for it. A vehicle like this, a 180-ton tank, is not meant to get to the front, as we see here, within 30 seconds of the medium tanks or some of the faster heavies. Surely that's meant to be a period of the game where the softer armored tanks can make use of their mobility to be able to get into position and juke it out before they have to start to deal with true behemoths like this that have 3,440 hit points as well. That's not really the final form of the MAUS, because I believe it's going to go up a little bit more when I get the final field mod as well. I feel that the increase of mobility for super heavy tanks like this have made them more competitive when they were already amongst the most competitive vehicles when you look at their statistics holistically based on win ratio. Now that might be because they are some of the easier vehicles to play. Easy to begin with, but I think tricky to master as well. They enable players who are fairly inexperienced in vehicles like this to still do well in many matchups because of their thick armor, their high hit points, and sometimes all they have to do is really just slow the enemy down or tank for their team to enable the vehicles around them to be successful. I must make a mention to how lucky I am getting with all of these shots at the start of the game and how they seem to be just looping in before the enemies manage to pull back round the corner. I guess sometimes latency, as I've been playing in Belarus and my ping has been higher, can actually be advantageous. And I do notice that happen to me quite often when I'm trying to pull back around a corner and somebody who may or may not have a worse connection manages to just be able to loop in a shell. Now I stop for a second and I'm typing to the Badger. I say, Badger, how cool are you? Want to rush with me? ? the Badger doesn't say anything. I guess maybe he just thinks I'm a bit of a weirdo playing the mouse, or maybe he has his chat disabled. A lot of people will have their chat disabled. And I decide that with now pretty much a third of the battle gone, 3.5 minutes nearly, and only 10 minutes to be able to win a game of Assault, then we're going to have to take the fight to the enemy team. Why am I going to sit there with my 3,440 hit points when I can get forwards and try and take it to all of these vehicles? We're bouncing gold rounds from the E50, the T55A, and the T110E3 that just managed to put a round towards the side. And as long as we keep our armor angled here, I mean, yeah, we're just going to push into all of these vehicles, and we're going to use our meat and our surprise to just harass our opponents here. We're going to focus on this E50 towards my right, but also try and keep my armor focused down towards the vehicles on the left. The E50 manages to ammo rack me, which was an inconvenience because I now no longer have a repair kit. But luckily, we're able to shut them down after they bounce a couple of rounds off the very thick armor that this vehicle has. And we get to finish them off and now be just the meatball, just distracting the enemy team, allowing my team to be successful behind us. And this is why these super heavy juggernauts are just so good inside World of Tanks, as I clutch fire against the T55A down below me. They're incredible because they're well armored and they can do things that no other tanks can dream of. These tanks are not meant to be bombing it along at 27 kilometers an hour as we saw there. Sure, as I go up this gentle gradient here, we're dropping down to about 22, 23. That's still faster than the mouse has ever been able to achieve. And for the first 5, 6, 7 years, 8 years of World of Tanks development, and it can now do it up slope. And when you can also turn, you can lock down the tracks of your opponents, and we can now just bully this T110E3 here. And we've got all the time in the world because what we're doing is we're giving him these micro rams in between our shells. You might be thinking, why is the T110E3 not repairing? I don't use a gun rammer on my mouse. My rate of fire is actually quite poor. But the reason why he's not repairing is because by bumping into his tracks here, we're doing micro amounts of damage to them, and we're stopping him from being able to repair. And it must be so frustrating to have a full health, non-turreted tank destroyer that's kind of meant to be the counter for a vehicle like this, now being absolutely obliterated. Now look, this game happened yesterday on my birthday, and I thought to myself, nah, shall I turn the T110E3 to be able to kill the Badger? Do I really want to be evil? There's like a little devil on my shoulder. And I thought to myself, nah, let's not stop there. Let's continue to push the T110E3 round so we can reward the Badger on our team with a kill on the Tier 10 American tank destroyer. I'm not gonna lie, I did have an absolute little demon on my shoulder for a second there, thinking, yeah, shall I let this T110E3 shoot this Badger? But no, it went away in about, I'd say half a second there. And luckily, the good guy sitting on my left shoulder, pulled through, and we turn them and we enable our Badger to be able to pick up their third kill of the game. And what we're seeing here is just how outrageous the mouse can be when you improve its accuracy, when you improve its acceleration. Do you notice how quickly we get up to 20 kilometers an hour? How we're going along at 23 here, now 24, 25, and we're doing it while we're slightly upslope. It's just 26. This is outrageous mobility. And just look at this thing plowing. This is not what 180-ton super heavy is meant to look like when it's waltzing around the battlefield. It was meant to lumber around the battlefield, and I think waltzing is probably a far better term now as we shut down the Su-130PM. This thing is just too fast, it turns too quickly, that stops its opponents from being able to outmaneuver it in close quarters combat as we saw against the T110E3. It allows it to turn to face its thickest armor towards its opponents as well, and get into positions to clean up like the tank has never been able to. For the first, I must have played this tank about 500 times in my World of Tanks career, if you want to call it that. And for the first several hundred, I was limited to 20 kilometers an hour. Then, probably I played about a couple of hundred games in this vehicle while it has had a 24 kilometer an hour top speed limit. And I can tell you yesterday that I decided to finally get the final form perfected ultimate mouse, albeit that I don't have a Bond Turbo on the tank, but I think that that's even more important because what you're seeing here is achievable by everyone and not just ranked players who have managed to get the Bond Turbo or big Bond players who are willing to demount the Turbo to be able to put it on their mouse to try and 3-mark the tank. And to have just a couple of games in this tank yesterday, upping that top speed limit from 24 with the regular turbo up to 27 with the turbo, which goes at 5 instead with the 6th modification bonus slot, and also to have the extra 2 kilometers an hour from the 7th modification. It just makes this thing outrageously good. And this just brings me to kind of my conclusion for all of this. The more that wargaming continue to make these micro changes inside the game, the more that it allows the balance of the game to be broken. I think there's a reason why this tank was and probably should still be limited to 20 kilometers an hour. And when you now allow it to not just go at 24, but also 27, I think you'd have to be ignorant to not know why the games these days, at least somewhat, are getting faster and faster and faster. It massively concerns me that field mods seem to be so strong on certain tanks, and on other vehicles they do feel like they're pretty much useless. And my real question is, why should a MAUS that has grinded pretty much 200,000 experience just be able to go 3 kilometers an hour, which is 15% more than the base top speed of a MAUS that has only just unlocked the tank? With wargaming putting in these micro advantages over micro advantages over micro advantages, they probably sit there and think, well, what does 1% mean when players can be good and make up for them? But when you keep adding on 1% onto 2%, onto 3%, onto 4%, onto 5%, it creates such a disparity that it's almost impossible for a regular player right off the bat to be able to be competitive. And why should someone have to play hundreds of games in a tier 10 tank such as this before they feel that they've finally reached the true form of it? But alas, it doesn't seem to matter what you say, what feedback you deliver wargaming. They're trying their very best to turn the game into an absolute grind fest. And unfortunately, I feel that if things keep going the way that they are, they might just grind out their player base as they find that there are lots of lovely other opportunities inside the free-to-play game market, which is blooming, to justify their time. Now, look, I don't want to make this too much of a heavy video. I also want this to be a moment of just appreciation for what is my favorite tank, I believe, all in all, at tier 10. The MAUS is that kind of tank which you can always just get in and it rewards you with tons of fun. And that's why I wanted to complete this thing, so to say, on my birthday yesterday. And I can tell you, yeah, if you set this thing up correctly and you know how to play a super heavy tank and you've got the confidence to be able to rush into situations, this thing's a bit of a monster. So one of the reasons why I've been putting so much time in with the MAUS is it's currently top of the tree. And so if you get your second win of the day, you can get 5 times experience. We can see what the result of that is here. 14,000 experience for a single game, albeit that this was one of my highest base experience MAUS games of all time with 1,582, and it was also achieved in just under 7.5 minutes. But when you've got a MAUS that can go 33% faster than the original MAUS could, all the way up at 27 kilometers an hour, there's no surprise. Now, I did get really lucky with my marksmanship this game. I think World of Tanks was hopefully rewarding me for my birthday and my favorite tank yesterday. But the fact remains, vehicles like this should not be able to go as fast as they do. There's a reason why they are amongst some of the most influential, at least holistically across the entire player base, with regards to their win ratio, and by making them faster and faster and faster, which is more impactful than making a tank that can already go at 50 kilometers an hour faster, gives me great concern in both wargaming's balancing department and also what they might be doing in the future, especially with Crew 2.0, a big uncertainty. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know what you think about a MAUS that can go at 27 kilometers an hour in the comments down below. And if you're watching this video as it goes live on Sunday, it's time for the World of Tanks Tech Tree Showcase live right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And this week, I'm going to be playing the Chinese light tanks, which are the most well-armored vehicles when it comes to the light tank category. And the reason why I'm featuring them is they're going to be top of the tree on Tuesday, so you can get them for a massive discount. So if you want to be fully prepared, come along live right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby, and I'll get you up to speed so you can smash your way down the line. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.